I used to think I had it all. At least, that's what I told myself every morning as I woke up beside her. Emily. Beautiful, intelligent, and endlessly patient. Emily. We'd been together for almost 5 years. We had a house we made our own, a dog we both adored, and a routine that was as predictable as the sunrise. To the outside world, we were the perfect couple. People looked at us and thought, they have it figured out. We were the kind of couple others envied, the kind everyone believed was built for the long haul. I believed that too at first. I thought I loved Emily deeply. I thought I was happy. But deep down, I started to feel something strange, something unfamiliar gnawing at me. It was a feeling that didn't have a name at first, just a vague sense of dissatisfaction, of something missing, like a crack in an otherwise perfect picture. Emily and I, we were in sync. We had our inside jokes, our special little moments, the things that make a marriage feel warm and secure. But there was an itch I couldn't scratch, something I couldn't explain to her without feeling like I was betraying everything we had. And that's when Lauren entered the picture. Lauren, Emily's younger sister. At first, I didn't think much of it. She was always around, always part of our family gatherings, and we got along well enough. But over time, something shifted. It wasn't like I had any control over it. It was subtle at first. A glance, a touch, a moment that seemed innocent enough, but something about it lingered, stayed with me. I couldn't explain it, but the chemistry between Lauren and me grew, like vines wrapping themselves tighter around my heart. In my mind, I justified it. I told myself that Emily was perfect. Yes, but something about Lauren stirred a part of me I didn't even know existed. It wasn't that I didn't love Emily. It was something darker, something forbidden, that I began to crave. I told myself it was just a fleeting moment, an escape, a brief indulgence. Nothing would change. I convinced myself I could have both. Keep Emily, the woman who gave me everything, and Lauren, the one who awakened something different in me. I didn't want to hurt anyone, but as time went on, I fell deeper into the lie. 3 years. 3 years of secrecy, lies, and constant deceit. Every time I kissed Emily goodnight, I wondered if she could somehow see through me. Could she feel that part of me was missing? Could she sense that my heart had split in two? I kept telling myself that I had everything under control, that I was smart enough to keep my worlds apart. But the truth was, I was spinning a web I could no longer escape. The house that used to feel like home began to feel like a prison. Every time Emily would ask me about my day, I found myself lying, carefully constructing answers that would keep her from asking more. The moments when we'd curl up together in front of the TV felt forced. The warmth of her touch began to feel like a reminder of the betrayal I was living. I knew what I was doing was wrong. There were nights when I couldn't sleep, when I'd lie there next to her, listening to her steady breathing, and wonder how much longer I could keep this up. But then I'd hear Lauren's voice in my head, feel the tension between us, and I'd remember why I'd let myself fall into this mess in the first place. It felt too good to stop. I never imagined it would end this way. I thought I was untouchable. I thought I could have both lives, both women, both worlds. But deep down, I knew that one day it would all come crashing down. The days stretched on, each one blending into the next like the gray monotony of a rainy afternoon. I kept up the charade, at least I tried to. I wore the mask of the perfect husband with Emily, making sure to give her all the affection and attention she deserved, even though my thoughts were elsewhere. There were times, brief moments, when I felt like I was two different people. One part of me was the man who loved his wife, the man who had promised to cherish her, to build a life together. The other was a man consumed by guilt, trapped in an affair with her sister, a lie that I knew could ruin everything. There were nights when Emily would fall asleep next to me, her breath slow and steady, the rise and fall of her chest a rhythmic comfort. And I would lie there, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I had let things get so complicated. How had I allowed myself to slip so far, to betray someone who had given me so much? The guilt would gnaw at me like a persistent ache. I'd close my eyes, willing myself to sleep, but the thoughts wouldn't stop. I kept hearing her laugh, the sound of Emily's voice when she talked about our plans for the future. She would say things like, "I can't wait for our next vacation," and I would smile, nodding, pretending that I was fully invested in the life we were building together, all the while knowing that I was lying to her. And then there was Lauren. The moments we shared were stolen, secretive, and thrilling. There were times when I would see her, and all the guilt and remorse would fade, replaced by a fleeting sense of satisfaction. I told myself it was temporary, that it didn't mean anything in the long run. But it did. Every time I saw Lauren, every time I touched her, I knew I was deepening the wound. I wasn't naive enough to think I could continue forever, that Emily wouldn't eventually notice the distance between us. The affair was consuming me. It was like a fire I kept feeding, hoping it would burn itself out. But instead, it spread, destroying everything in its path. There were days when Emily would ask me how my day went, and I would lie without even thinking about it. I told her I had been at the office longer than usual, working on a project. I gave her excuses that, in retrospect, I know she saw right through. The smile she gave me, the way she would look at me with an unreadable expression, it made my stomach twist. She must have suspected something, and the guilt would crush me all over again. I hated myself for it, but I also couldn't stop. There was a part of me that wanted both. I wanted Emily's love, her warmth, her stability, and I wanted Lauren's excitement, her freedom. It was like being torn in two, each side pulling me further from the other. I tried to push the guilt away, telling myself I was still a good husband, that this was just a phase, a mistake that I could fix later. But deep down, I knew the truth. There was no fixing this. And each time I looked at Emily, the weight of that knowledge would settle like a stone in my chest. It was only a matter of time before she found out. And when she did, I knew I would lose everything. I'll never forget that day. It was a Saturday, and Emily had planned one of those quiet afternoons we used to enjoy. No work, no distractions, just us. I had spent most of the morning at the office, pretending everything was fine, lying to both Emily and myself, knowing I was going home to a wife who didn't deserve the betrayal I was about to continue. I was so tangled in my lies that I didn't even notice how distant I had become. I walked into the house that afternoon, expecting the usual peaceful atmosphere. But there was something different about it, something unsettling. Emily was in the kitchen, and I could tell something was off. She was standing by the counter, her back to me, chopping vegetables for dinner, but the air felt thick, heavy. "Hey, I called out, trying to sound normal, trying to pretend everything was okay. She turned around slowly, her expression unreadable. There was no smile, no warmth, just the faintest trace of something darker. A hint of disappointment? Fear? I couldn't quite place it, but it stopped me dead in my tracks. "Hubert, we need to talk," she said softly, her voice not angry, not accusatory, just calm, almost too calm. A chill ran through me. My gut tightened. Something was wrong. My pulse quickened. "Of course, what's going on?" I tried to sound casual, but even I could hear the nervousness creeping into my voice. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked over to the kitchen table and sat down, still looking at me with that unreadable expression. I followed her, my heart pounding in my chest, trying to prepare myself for something, anything, but knowing deep down that I wasn't ready for whatever was coming. Finally, she spoke, her eyes meeting mine. "I know everything, Hubert." At first, I couldn't process what she was saying. The words felt too heavy, too real. My mind raced, trying to catch up with the reality of the situation. It felt like the world had stopped moving, like time had frozen in place. "What do you mean?" I whispered, even though I already knew the answer. My stomach dropped, and I felt like I was suffocating. She didn't flinch, didn't get upset. Instead, she just looked at me, her gaze steady. "I know about you and Lauren." The floor seemed to shift beneath my feet. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I opened my mouth to say something, but nothing came out. There was nothing I could say that would make it better, no excuse that could undo the damage. She didn't wait for me to speak. "I don't know how you thought you could hide this from me, Hubert. I saw the signs. I felt it." Her voice cracked, but she quickly regained her composure. Her eyes filled with a sadness that I knew I could never fix. "I've always known, in some way, I didn't want to admit it. I didn't want to believe that the man I married, the man I loved, could do this to me. Her voice was quiet, steady, but the pain in her words hit me harder than anything I had ever felt. I sat down across from her, unable to look her in the eyes. I wanted to reach out, to apologize, but the words stuck in my throat. What could I possibly say that would matter? How could I take back the years of lies? I could feel her slipping away from me in that moment, and the guilt that had been eating at me for so long came rushing to the surface. Emily, I'm sorry. My voice broke, but I couldn't finish the sentence. It didn't feel like enough. It never would be. She shook her head, a single tear escaping her eye, but she didn't wipe it away. She let it fall, her expression softening for just a second before it hardened again. I loved you, Hubert. I trusted you, and you destroyed that. I felt the weight of her words, felt it deep in my chest, like a physical pain. There was nothing I could do to make it right. I had already lost her. She stood up then, walking to the door of the living room and stopping in the doorway. She didn't look back, but her voice was clear as she said one last thing. I need you to leave, Hubert. It wasn't angry, it wasn't dramatic. It was final. Her words hung in the air, and I knew this was the end. There would be no coming back from this. I had destroyed the most important thing in my life. The life we had built together, the trust, the love. It was all gone in a moment, and I was the one who had shattered it. I stood there, paralyzed, as she walked away, leaving me in the silence that followed. It was the quietest I had ever felt in my entire life. The days that followed were a blur. It felt like I was walking through a fog. Everything around me was hazy, distant. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't think. Emily's words kept echoing in my mind, replaying over and over. I know everything. How did I get here? How had I been so stupid, so blind to everything I had built with her? The house felt empty. The silence between us was suffocating. There were no more shared meals, no more quiet evenings curled up on the couch, no more casual conversations. Emily had shut herself off completely. I could see it in the way she moved through the house, the way she avoided my gaze, the way she didn't speak unless she absolutely had to. I tried to apologize. I told her over and over how sorry I was, how much I regretted what I had done. But each apology fell flat. I could see it in her eyes. There was nothing left there for me anymore. The trust had been broken beyond repair. The love that had once been so pure between us was now a distant memory, a ghost of what we had. I thought I could fix it. I thought if I gave her enough space, if I showed her how sorry I was, that things might go back to normal. But they didn't. There was no magic fix. No amount of words or gestures could change what had already been done. The worst part wasn't the anger. It wasn't her yelling at me, demanding answers. It wasn't even the silence that followed our conversations. It was the sadness in her eyes. The way she looked at me like I was a stranger, like I was no longer the man she had married. And in a way, I wasn't. I had become someone I didn't even recognize. The man who had promised to love and cherish her had destroyed everything. I had expected to feel guilty, and I did. I had expected to feel regret, and I did. But what I didn't expect was the crushing emptiness that settled into my chest. I had destroyed the most important relationship in my life, and now I was left with nothing but the weight of my own mistakes. I spent my days pacing around the house, trying to find something to do, anything to distract myself from the suffocating reality of my situation. I tried calling Lauren, hoping for some kind of support, some kind of reassurance, but there was nothing. She had disappeared from my life just like Emily had. I was completely alone. Emily didn't ask for much. She didn't demand anything from me except my love and loyalty. And I had failed her. I knew what was coming. I knew that Emily couldn't forgive me, that she wouldn't want to be with someone who had broken her trust so completely. I could feel it in the air, the way she avoided me, the way she refused to acknowledge my presence. She had made up her mind, and I had no way of changing it. I could already see the cracks in our marriage widening, the pieces of our life together falling away like sand slipping through my fingers. I thought I had a chance to fix things, but the truth was, there was nothing left to fix. It was too late, and I had no one to blame but myself. I had to go back. Even though I could feel the finality of Emily's decision in every word she said, I had to go back to the house. I had to collect my things and maybe, just maybe, face the truth that I had known deep down all along. That Emily was done with me. That I had destroyed everything. The drive there felt like an eternity. The familiar streets I had driven countless times now felt like foreign terrain, every turn twisting the knife deeper into my chest. I could feel the weight of what I had done pressing down on me with every mile. The house was silent when I arrived. Too silent. I almost couldn't bring myself to open the door. It had once been the place where laughter echoed, where we'd made plans for the future, where we'd shared our lives. Now it felt like a tomb, a cold, empty shell of what used to be. I stepped inside, my footsteps echoing in the quiet. The house seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for something, anything to happen. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was intruding on something that no longer belonged to me. Emily was nowhere to be seen. I moved through the house slowly, collecting my things, but it felt like I was just going through the motions. I couldn't focus on anything. The weight of the guilt, the shame, it was suffocating. As I walked past the living room, I caught sight of a framed photo of us from happier times, a memory of a time before everything had fallen apart. I stopped and looked at it for a long moment, the image of the two of us smiling at a family gathering. We looked so happy, so in love. How could I have thrown it all away? But there was no time for reflection now. I had to finish packing, had to leave before Emily came back. The thought of facing her again, of seeing the pain in her eyes, was more than I could bear. I moved towards the bedroom, the last place I wanted to be. When I opened the door, I felt the floor slip out from under me. There, on the floor, was Emily. At first, I couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. I thought I had imagined it. My heart stopped, and my breath caught in my throat as I moved toward her, my mind racing in a panic, trying to understand. And then I saw it. The truth. The image that would haunt me for the rest of my life. She was lying there, lifeless, surrounded by the stillness of the room. I couldn't move. My body felt frozen in place, like I was caught in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I dropped to my knees beside her, my hands trembling as I reached out to her. Her skin was cold. Her once bright eyes were closed, the light gone from them forever. The weight of what I had done hit me all at once, crashing over me in waves. My betrayal, my selfishness, it had all led to this moment. I tried to call out to her, to shake her awake, to do something, anything, but I knew it was too late. I had lost her. I had destroyed the woman who had loved me, the woman who had given me everything. The room spun as I collapsed beside her, the reality of what had happened settling in with a gut-wrenching finality. It was my fault. I had caused this. I had taken her love, her trust, and I had shattered it. And now she was gone. There were no words to describe the weight of that moment. There were no apologies that could bring her back. I had failed her in every possible way, and now I would live with the consequences for the rest of my life. As I sat there, holding her hand, my tears falling onto the floor, I realized something that tore through me like a hurricane. This was the end of everything, the end of our love, the end of everything I had taken for granted. And in the cold silence of the room, I understood that there would never be a way to undo the damage. I had lost her, forever. Reading Hubert's story left me feeling an overwhelming mixture of emotions. Guilt, sorrow, disbelief, and, most of all, heartbreak. The pain that both Emily and Hubert go through is almost too much to bear. You can feel Hubert's internal torment as he struggles with his actions, the guilt slowly eating him alive. He tried to justify what he was doing, but deep down, he knew he was hurting the one person who had trusted him the most. His affair was like a slow poison, and even though he knew it was destroying everything, he couldn't stop. What's so haunting about this story is that Hubert's realization comes too late. The damage he caused isn't just emotional, it's irreversible. And that final moment, when he finds Emily lifeless, is gut-wrenching. The enormity of his betrayal hits him in that instant, and he is left with nothing but regret. There's nothing more tragic than realizing you've lost the person you love forever because of your own selfishness and mistakes. I feel an immense amount of sympathy for Emily. She trusted Hubert, she loved him, and she believed in their future together. To find out about his affair with her sister, and to carry that pain silently, trying to hold things together, only to be crushed by his betrayal is heartbreaking. What makes it worse is that Emily had no one but herself to rely on in the end. She made a choice that reflected her pain, but in the end, she couldn't escape from the devastation Hubert had caused. To anyone reading this story, let me say this: love and trust are fragile things. Once they are broken, there's no turning back. Hubert's story is a painful reminder of how easily trust can be shattered. It's also a reminder that we have to be responsible for our actions, especially in relationships. The consequences of betrayal are often irreversible, and the damage can't be undone by mere apologies or promises. If you love someone, you need to honor that trust. Betrayal is not something you can undo, and it has the potential to destroy everything. If you're in a situation where you're tempted to hurt someone you love, stop and think. Think about what you truly want and whether a momentary lapse is worth losing everything. If you've already hurt someone, understand that rebuilding that trust will be an incredibly painful and possibly impossible journey. We cannot always fix our mistakes, no matter how much we want to. For Emily and for Hubert, the lesson is clear. Never take someone's love for granted, and never assume that they'll always be there. You only have one chance to treat people with the respect and love they deserve. Lastly, if you're struggling with guilt or have hurt someone in a way that feels irreparable, seek help. Talk to someone you trust and work on understanding the depth of your actions. Regret will not change anything. Growth will. Healing will. But only if you take responsibility and change the behavior that led you to this point.